So to sort of wind down the evening, I thought I'd tell a little story about Scramble. Those who've read it, this will all sound very familiar, so I'm going to recap that for you. And for those of you who just came in tonight, I would love it to be able to tell you how this book came about and why and what it's for. So, there's an old saying in business, in publishing rather, every book is a failure. And nowhere is this more true than in business books. They're repetitive, boring, long, repetitive. Did I say repetitive? They promise a miracle at $25 and die on the nightstand with a bookmark stuck in chapter 1. Even when they're filled with facts and sage advice, they fail to convey the one thing we crave most: the experience of trying an idea, a new idea, the excitement, the obstacles, the setbacks, the human struggle. In the same way that every book is a failure, every business is a failure too. The hardest thing for any leader to do is to get a complex organization to execute a simple idea. That's because organizations are filled with people, real people. And real people are notoriously hard to lead. By the time your simple idea hits the marketplace, it's been black-hatted, slow-walked, watered down, tortured, polluted, and starved of attention. This is the kind of truth that fiction brings out best. Scramble starts in the middle of a story. The drizzle turned to rain, kicking up tiny spikes of water on the oily streets. David Stone pulled the handle of the Uber and piled into the back, slamming the door behind him. "Easy on the Prius," says the driver. Already we know there's trouble. The rain, the oily streets, the slamming door. David is a young CEO in over his head. He's been called back to the office by Andy, the founder of Big Sky. The board isn't happy, he says. They want a turnaround plan in 5 weeks. Maybe you're not a CEO, but you know that 5 weeks is not enough time to reinvent a company. David, however, has no choice. Big Sky's future and the jobs of thousands of people depend on him. If he gives up now, he'll be branded a quitter. "I recognized you right away," says the driver, eyes up in the rearview mirror. The mirror, we know, is a metaphor. David needs to look back to the past before he can see the future. But he's not quite ready to do that. The past is too painful. CEO of the hotel company, right? Tough gig. Talk about a tough gig, thinks David. This guy's an Uber driver. He doesn't know he'll be booted out by bots in 5 years. "Why can't you just build a new business," the driver says, "and let the other one simmer? It's not like you can fix the economy." With that, you have all the clues you need to see the arc of the narrative. Like most leaders, David is caught between a desire for control and the need for teamwork. If he could save the company by himself, he would. But a company is not a one-man band. The driver hands back a card with the name Dimitri Soukouras. "My friends call me Socrates, with a K," he says, "because I ask too many questions." And now the story is off and running. What does David need to learn? 3 things: how to delegate, how to build on failure, and how to lead a team to the highest levels of collaboration. He decides to widen the circle. He calls an old friend, Gard Scott, who runs a consulting firm. Gard and his team come up with a simple framework called Agile Strategy. He takes the group through the P's and Q's of the Agile framework. The 5 questions of strategy and the 5 principles of design thinking. The first of the 5 Qs is deceptively simple. What is our purpose? Why are we in business beyond making money? Why do we work for this company instead of that company? What do we want to happen in the world as a result of working together? The second Q is this: who do we serve? Do we really know who our customers are, what they care about? Does our purpose align with their purpose? What do we want our customers to become? The third question is, where should we compete? We know that strategy is a game of categories. Your choice of where to play determines your rivals, your moves, your paths to the future. Should we start a new category? Reinvent an old one? As you think about this question, consider the next one. How will we win? Successful products don't win because they're better or cheaper. They win because they're different. Really different. Guard tells the execs to complete the following statement. Our brand is the only blank that blanks. The only. Try this on your own brand. In the first blank, put the category you compete in. Let's say airline. In the second blank, put in your key differentiator. Let's say the only airline that makes it cheaper to fly than drive. Americans will recognize this brand. It's Southwest Airlines. Let's try another one. Our brand is the only e-commerce site that lets you sell your handmade crafts to a large audience. Who's that? Anybody? Etsy. It's now a worldwide brand. You sell your crafts online. The trick is to state your onlyness in 8 words or less. Don't use any commas or ands because they tend to unfocus your onlyness. An exception to the and rule is if your onlyness depends on combining 2 benefits that have never been combined before. For example, our brand is the only automaker that combines plug-in power with elegant styling. Who's that? Come on. Tesla, right. If customers can't see you're the only in your category, you've already lost. You'll be forced to compete on price. The final Q is, how will we grow? That depends. Grow what? Revenues, profits, market share, customer loyalty? Are there adjacent categories we could capture and defend? Where would our customers like to go next? Unless you know where you're headed, you can't map your journey. Now let's look at the 5 principles of design thinking. The first is problemizing. Einstein believed that a problem well framed is a problem half solved. Is this the right problem to address? Is it worthy of our best efforts? What's the opportunity cost of ignoring it? The second P is pinballing. Pinballing is bouncing ideas off of each other to trigger new ideas. 3 good techniques for pinballing are thinking in metaphors, reversing assumptions, and arranging marriages between ideas that haven't been introduced before. For example, what if you married an online store with a charity? You might get Tom's Shoes. What if you married a movie lot with an immersive experience? You might get HBO's Westworld at South by Southwest. Reversing assumptions is another great way to start the ideas bouncing. Take retail banks. For example, we assume that banks are somber places with wood paneling, teller windows, and lots of fine print. Air Bank in the Czech Republic reversed all those assumptions. They have plastic furniture, no teller windows, and all their print is large. In a few short years, they've expanded to dozens of branches and become one of the most successful banks in the country. This is the power of pinballing. The third P is probing. What most people fail to appreciate is that new ideas are fragile. Throwing away an idea because it doesn't immediately work is like giving up a baby because it can't hold a job. New ideas need nurturing. GARD teaches the team a clever technique for brainstorming called parallel thinking. It protects fragile ideas while the group probes for their hidden potential. Okay, we all know what happens in a brainstorming session. One person comes up with a fresh idea, and another person attacks it. It's more like duck hunting than brainstorming. So what parallel thinking does is it changes this dynamic. The leader asks the whole group to think in the same direction at the same time. This stops people from shooting down ideas on the fly. It creates the process of building up instead of tearing down. The fourth P is prototyping, the heart of design thinking. By definition, best practices can never be new practices. Making prototypes lets you visualize a new course of action before you commit to it. Without this step, you're more likely to run back to the safety of best practices. The last P is proofing. Proofing means testing with prototypes. It removes the risk of risky strategies by exposing them to the audience in advance. That way they can be proven before they're produced. You're looking for insights you can take back to the drawing board. Prototyping and proofing create a virtuous cycle of simplexity, complexity compressed into its simplest form. When the P's and Q's of Agile strategy are multiplied together, they explode with possibilities. They cut planning time from months down to weeks. What's more important, they lead to game-changing results. If you haven't read the book, I won't spoil it for you, but I will tell you that Big Sky's turnaround plan is disruptive. You know an idea is disruptive when it scares the hell out of everybody. David worries about this. If an idea is disruptive, it must be new. If it's new, it must be risky. If it's risky, the board may try to rein it in. If they do rein it in, it'll no longer be disruptive. This is where design thinking comes in, GARD tells him. It plays in the gap between what is and what could be. Design thinking imagines new solutions that weren't on the table before. Then it prototypes them so they can be tested and improved. The easiest way to understand design thinking, he says, is by comparing it with traditional thinking. Traditional thinking uses a two-step process, know and do. You know something, and then you do something. You know something because you read about it in a case study, or you tried it at your last company, or you saw it in a business magazine, and then you act on it. Simple. But if your goal is innovation, traditional thinking is woefully inadequate. So what design thinking does is add a middle step between knowing and doing called making. You imagine a new solution that hasn't been tried before, then you prototype it to see if it works. The process of making not only pushes back on what you know, but what you do. It takes a risky idea and de-risks it so you can move forward with confidence. Now here's the real secret of Agile strategy. Swarming. Think about swarms in nature. Ants, birds, schools of fish, acting in concert for a specific purpose. In business, a swarm is a group of specialists acting in concert for a specific project. Members of a swarm are bound by a common goal. Individually, they may not have all the answers, but together they have everything they need to design the way forward. Instead of working through strategy in a linear way, like this, goal setting, research, brainstorming, strategy, design, testing, a swarm attacks the problem from all sides at once, like this. This keeps the work liquid until it's ready to gel. By contrast, when you use a linear process, each phase is walled off to later phases. Of course, it's easier to manage this way, but it's too slow and restrictive to create fast breakthrough strategies. Why? Let's say an experienced designer in phase 5 gets a valuable customer insight that the market researchers have overlooked. That insight will have zero effect on the outcome. The research phase is already closed. As each phase closes, the path to greatness gets narrower and narrower. In the story, Big Sky's chief revenue officer struggles with design thinking. Her superpower is getting things done, not designing strategies. But by using assumption reversal, she poses a startling question late in the swarm. Why are call centers always staffed by the lowest paid employees? Aren't they actually the front lines of the brand? What if our call center was staffed by highly paid experts? In the traditional linear process, provocative questions like these would be walled off from consideration. Swarming builds up strategy holistically in layers. An agile strategist doesn't start at the top of a list and work down any more than a painter starts at the top of a canvas and works down. The paint needs to stay wet until the whole painting is finished. Of course, we know what happens at the end of the story. The ragtag group of executives becomes a high-functioning strategy team. They save the company with sheer determination and a burst of design thinking. I'll spare you the exciting details. Is business boring? I, for one, think it's thrilling. I love the complexity, the competition, the camaraderie, the white-knuckle pace of execution. Business today is more holistic than linear, more chaotic than calm. It hunts for rough answers to smart questions, not right answers to irrelevant ones. It feels more like playing rock and roll than classical music. Now, if there's one thing I'd like you to take away from my talk and this day, it's this. In a time of radical change, we can no longer play the notes as written. We have to invent a whole new scale. We have to collaborate in real time with skilled, creative players bound by a single purpose and guided by a visionary framework. If your goal is to build a culture of innovation, you first have to demonstrate it. You have to gather a group of co-conspirators, learn agile strategy together, and show the world that design means business. And there's no better place to start than right where you are. Thank you. John, would you like to close the evening? Do you have something to say?
As you go. I have to say, again, it's been a really, really great day, and the response of all of you to Marty and Andy have been overwhelming, and the reverse too. I think engaging, in a very personal way, and I think that's so good, and we're pleased to have you here. So I hope you come back again. Say it in front of an audience. Yes, I will. Yeah, why not?
Yes.
Okay, there is some more drink left, or is that it finished? Some more drink you can have, and I'm sure both Andy and Marty will answer questions.
We'll hang around. I'll sign some books if there are any left.
Don't wear them down too much. So, big round of applause for both of them. Stand up, Andy. And thank you for coming. You're a great bunch.